We were just walking through the Bharat Diamond Bourse, and I was mentioning this to Pritesh. The kind of energy that one gets as you walk into this facility and walk through this facility is just truly amazing. It represents the vibrancy of the Indian diamond industry, and it's just such a pleasure to walk through this facility. So thank you, Anup bhai, for giving us this opportunity to speak about an extremely important subject, which I'm sure is very, very close to each one of you. You've all been in the industry for decades, and you've seen diamonds with fluorescence being devalued. You've also seen that some of these diamonds have better brightness under daylight, and it's always been a point of intrigue. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It is that apparent contradiction that we will discuss in the conversation today. My role today, before I turn this over to Yun, is to set the context, but not only the context. What I also want to do is to speak a few words about the role that GIA plays in the industry. There's a significant aspect to the research that GIA does for the industry, and I want to touch upon that in my conversation today. First of all, I will acknowledge people who are in this room, many of whom have very deep association with GIA. My deep respects to all of you. In fact, your time of association with GIA has been much more than mine, okay? And I'm sure you'll appreciate the point that I'll make here. Now, despite the knowledge that you have of the industry, allow me to take a couple of minutes to speak about GIA, many of which you probably know about 1931, founded in the year 1931, with the purpose of professionalizing the retail side of the US business through education. And over a period of time, went on to establish standards, the industry standards, that is quite well known that all of us in the industry use today. And then began grading diamonds at the request of our customers. And so it was actually not by design. It was by accident. The GIA in the early 50s began grading of diamonds in our laboratories. Formalized research in the 1970s, and then expanded globally in 2000. And as we stand here today, 95 years later, GIA is as strong as ever. Over 3,000 employees worldwide, 10 laboratories, 6 school campuses, 5 research centers. I think an important question to ask is, 95 years later, how grounded are we to our mission? And I'm here to say that we're as grounded to our mission as we have ever been. Our mission of protecting consumers, our mission of building trust in the gems and jewelry industry. And I'm sure you all agree that today, more than ever, the need for trust in the industry is high. I'm sure this is a statement we could have made 10 years back and it would have still been valid. Okay? But as we go, the need for trust is critical as we go through the next several years. Now, often when I meet with customers, they ask, what's changing in GIA? There certainly is a lot that is changing in GIA, but I think more importantly, a question that we must ask is, what is not changing in GIA? And I'm sure that in the last several months, you've seen significant leadership changes that have happened in GIA. But the important thing is to know what isn't changing in GIA. What isn't changing is the independence. A very, very important aspect of trust, and it's not changing. The scientific excellence, the commitment to research, which you will see in the conversation that we'll have later today, not changing. Integrity in the way that we operate, and trustworthiness with which we will work with the industry. These are not changing with all the changes that we're going through. Now, today's topic is of great importance, and in fact, it relates to the context that I wanted to set, and also relates to the value that GIA brings to the industry through its research. So what we will be doing today is to share GIA's research on this subject of fluorescence. And some of you may know, all of this has already been published. It's been published in the Gems and Gemology, and also makes references to when, as we get into the subject in a little bit, and it is soon to be available in our reports. So this is a natural extension, this is the progression with which GIA approaches building trust in the industry. It's research, then gets published, and over a period of time, if it's relevant, it becomes available in the report, in the GIA grading report. It's part of a long-standing tradition that stretches back to the first issue of Gems and Gemology in the mid-30s. And we've published this every quarter since. Now, speaking again on the importance of research, it is GIA's most important commitment to the industry. Research for us drives everything that we do. Within the laboratory, it drives the methods that we use in grading diamonds. It guides us in the grading processes that we have. Instrumentation development, research drives instrumentation development, and it is those instruments that we use in our laboratories as well. And last but not least, it also guides us in the curriculum that we use in education. Many may not know the significance of the commitment that GIA has in research. It's approximately a team of 140 people in 5 countries, in 5 locations in the US, in New York, and in Carlsbad, in Japan, in Bangkok, and in Hong Kong. It's 140 people, 23 scientists, 38 gemologists, 60 engineers and technicians, 25 doctorates, nearly 1,800 years of combined experience. And last but not least, the longest serving employee has been with GIA for 47 years. I'm sure he has seen it all. Some of the areas of our research are mineralogy, gem chemistry, geology of gem material, treatments, an extremely important aspect, which is so relevant to the industry today. Every day there are new treatments that come about, and it's an important part of GIA's research. Laboratory grown diamonds, laboratory grown gemstones, instrumentation and detection techniques. So these are some of the areas that GIA researches on. Once again, one of a kind field gemology team in Bangkok. I think this is certainly worth mentioning. Some of you may have heard Wim, who's based out of Bangkok, speak in other sessions, but GIA has a one of a kind field gemology team in Bangkok. This is a team that just actually came back from Madagascar. 104 field trips. So these are people who actually go into the mines and they collect samples from mines, primary samples from mines that are used in research when it comes to identification, when it comes to treatments and all of that. 30 countries, over 32,000 samples that have been collected. Interestingly, over 2,000 samples have been collected by our gemologists, by GIA gemologists. And this is what goes into the whole science of identification, origin determination, treatment determination, and all of that. And once again, the most important part is GIA's research is public. The knowledge is shared with the industry on a regular basis. Now, I stand here today among stalwarts of the industry. I feel truly privileged to speak about this, right? And I must admit that my own personal contribution to all of this has been minuscule. But then, as one of my colleagues often tells me, I stand on the shoulder of giants of the industry, and that is what gives me the privilege today to stand in front of you and speak about all of this. And it's the fact that I stand on their shoulders that makes me tall. On the lighter side, a personal desire that I've always had. So let's talk a little bit about today's point of research. It is fluorescence. So we're going to talk about the impact of fluorescence on diamond appearance. That's the subject of the conversation. Once again, inspired by decades of GIA's research, it addresses misconceptions and improves industry's misunderstanding. So to talk about it is none other than Dr. Yuen, an accomplished researcher, a metrologist, the director of quality at GIA. And you know, when you go back to the publications related to the first of this came out 30 years back in the year 1997. So that was the first publication on this subject, right, of appearance based on fluorescence. And the article that was published, the research that was published in 1997 was mostly based on visual human observations. That's what happened in those days. Again, in that research reached some very important conclusions on fluorescence. 20-some years later, it was followed up with another study. In fact, Dr. Yuen was a part of that study and was also a co-author of that report that came out in the year 2021. Now, the difference in 2021 was that the research was based more on scientific instrumentation, more of an objective measurement that was used to understand the appearance of diamonds that have fluorescence. And study came up with the same conclusions that we did in the year 1997. Both of these papers are available in gia.edu. But I will ask this question. Can you raise your hand if you read an article in the Gems and Gemology? I mean, it's still very few hands, right? And I try to do it too. It's not easy. It is just full of science, not easy reading. But I personally have found my buddy. It's called AI. Yeah? So I would encourage all of you to try that. AI has this very unique ability to take this super complex scientific article and then comprise it and concise it into maybe 2 pages of a summary, and I'll tell you that is great to read. So I would certainly encourage all of you to use AI to read some of the publications that we have. Now, the key takeaways from this research: fluorescence generally has a neutral to positive effect on appearance in daylight conditions. The research also found that fluorescence does not affect or does not cause haziness or lack of transparency in diamonds. Lack of transparency is caused by structural defects in diamonds, defects that allow light to scatter, and so it's not really fluorescence. But the research also found that there's a small amount of diamonds, very, very small percentage of diamonds, that do get impacted when there's a combination of lack of transparency and higher levels of fluorescence. And so here is the best to talk about it. I just wanted to give you a quick summary. So you're better off hearing about all this from Dr. Yuen, but I'll close with this statement. We're not far from approaching our centennial, 5 years away from being 100 years of age. And as GIA approaches its centennial, our goal is to build on the legacy of previous generations. Our goal is to create a future-ready institute that's anchored in science, that's powered by technology, and that is rooted in trust. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Shiv, who will introduce you. Thank you.